The entire blood-soaked dimension screamed in agony. Amara's action was like hurling a block of ice into a blazing furnace. The reality around her shuddered violently, the fleshy sky convulsing, and the puppet-like humans on the streets dissolved into pools of black blood. The puppet Callum was flung backward by an invisible surge of energy, its body crumpling and motionless. The tear in space that Amara's blood had created now became more distinct, a shimmering, ethereal path leading straight toward the pulsing red core in the distance. Silas no longer wore his smug demeanor. He stared at Amara with a mix of astonishment and rage. Your blood? Impossible. That blood was supposed to be the key to unification, not defiance. Amara didn't respond. She gasped for breath, her palms burning with pain, but a truth had crystallized in her mind. Her blood was a weapon. The entity seemed to realize this too. It saw that brute force couldn't subdue her. It changed tactics. The chaotic screams in Amara's mind abruptly fell silent. In their place came a single voice, ancient, powerful, and strangely seductive. It no longer attacked, it spoke, addressing only her. Amara, my descendant, you have finally returned. The words struck her mind like lightning. Descendant? Who are you? She whispered, her question nearly drowned by the pounding of the core. I am the beginning. I am the forgotten memory of the stars, the knowledge buried beneath the sands. Of time, the voice continued, smooth as velvet. I have waited for one with blood as pure as yours, the blood of the priests who once served me. It began to dredge up her deepest pain. They mocked you in Luxor, didn't they? They called you a failure. They couldn't see your brilliance, but I see it. With my power, you can rewrite history. You can restore Luxor to greater glory than ever before. You can show them all how. Wrong they were. The temptation was sweet. A part of Amara, the ambitious archaeologist rejected by the world, stirred. To prove its power, the entity turned its attention to Elena. The trembling, sobbing journalist suddenly fell silent, then burst into louder sobs. But this time they were tears of artificial joy. See? I can control emotions, grant happiness or pain. Join me and you will be a queen. Amara clenched her teeth, the pain in her palms anchoring her to reality. You're not a god, she growled. You're a prison, a parasitic disease. Her rejection enraged the entity. The seductive whisper morphed into a furious roar. In her mind, ungrateful traitor. A hallucination hit with terrifying force. She was back in Luxor, but the temple was now engulfed in flames. The stones screamed, and her former colleagues burned alive, pointing at her, their mouths gaping in a silent wail. It's all your fault. The psychic pressure was so intense that Amara felt a sharp pain in her ears. She touched them and felt warm liquid, blood. Blood was seeping from her ears. It's still resisting. Kill it, Silas shouted, seeing Amara paralyzed. The puppet Callum, previously disabled, began to move again. Its joints creaked as they snapped back into place. It rose slowly, its black eyes locking onto Amara. But before it could act, Omar's possessed body stepped forward, blocking the puppet's path. No, his multi-layered voice boomed. The law is set. The descendant must be brought to the core. The unification must be completed. There seemed to be a conflict within the entity's own commands, a tension between destroying the defiant one and delivering the key to its lock. That brief hesitation was all Amara needed. The excruciating physical and mental pain had sharpened her mind to an uncanny edge. It needs me. It's not omnipotent. It fears my blood. The vision of a burning Luxor dissolved. All that remained was the blood-soaked dimension and a singular truth. The only way to end this was to move. Forward. Without hesitation, she sprang to her feet. She no longer paid attention to Callum or Silas. Her target was the pulsing, red fleshy core at the end of the ethereal path. She began to run. Each step through the river of blood was a defiance. She was no longer an archaeologist seeking answers. She was a descendant wielding the only weapon, charging toward the heart of an enemy to end a war that had raged for millennia. Amara no longer heard Elena's screams or Omar's prayers. Her entire world had narrowed to the shimmering path before her and the massive fleshy core pulsing at its end. The psychic screams battered her mind like a storm, but the pain from her bleeding palms was an anchor keeping her sane. Her blood created a small bubble of clarity, a pocket of reason amidst the ocean of madness, allowing her to press forward while others had fallen. As she drew closer, the core's true scale overwhelmed her. It was a mountain of flesh, the heart of a dead god, still desperately contracting. The air around it was scalding, and cascades of blood sprayed from its surface valves, forming a hot crimson rain. Stop it! Silas's shout echoed. He had realized her intent. The puppet Callum, its joints creaking, obeyed instantly. It lunged at Amara, its black eyes devoid of emotion. Amara was no warrior, but fear had granted her agility. She slipped on the blood slick floor, dodging the puppet's grasp. It lost its balance, crashing face first into the blood pool with a sickening splash. But Silas was right there. Gone was his calm facade. His face was now twisted with rage and fanaticism. He charged, tackling Amara into the blood pool at the foot of the massive core. They grappled in the thick, warm liquid. Silas was far stronger, his hands clamping around Amara's wrists, trying to stop her from touching anything. Fool! He roared, his voice overpowering the core's pulsing. You're destroying humanity's salvation, a new order, a perfect consciousness. This isn't salvation, Amara screamed back, struggling. It's a disease, a prison. He pinned her down, her face inches from the blood pool's surface. She could see her distorted reflection and the towering fleshy core above. In a final desperate act, she summoned all her strength, scooped a handful of thick blood, and flung it into Silas's face. Caught off guard, he loosened his grip for a second to wipe his eyes. That second was enough. Amara grabbed the sharp stone she still clutched, and with a swift motion, drove it into Silas's shoulder. He howled in pain and fury. For the first time, his blood sprayed, mingling with the sea of blood around them, wasting. No moment, Amara scrambled to her feet. She didn't flee. She charged toward one of the massive arteries connecting the core to the floor, a fleshy tube as thick as a tree trunk, and she pressed both of her bleeding palms against it. Boom! A violent reaction erupted. Her pure blood, the blood of the descendant, acted like a potent poison to the entity's circulatory system. The artery she touched convulsed wildly, turning black and shriveling as if corroded by acid. The massive fleshy core emitted a deafening screech, a cry of pure agony. It contracted frantically, no longer in rhythm. A colossal tremor shook the entire dimension. The shockwave flung Silas backward. It nearly knocked Amara off, but she gritted her teeth, clinging to the dying artery. As the core writhed in pain, something unexpected happened. Its surface cracked. With a thunderous tear, a massive gash appeared on its body, like a wound ripped open. it revealed a pitch-black void, a deep abyss leading to the entity's very heart. The screams now seemed to emanate from that void. The path was open. Not a granted passage, but a wound she had created. Amara released the dead artery. She stood, drenched in blood, but her eyes blazed with resolve. She had wounded it. Now it was time to finish it. She stared into the screaming black void at the heart of her enemy and stepped forward. Amara crossed the gash in the core's surface. It felt like passing through a warm waterfall, and she found herself in an even more surreal space. She was inside the heart of the heart, a labyrinth of pulsing fleshy arteries, glowing nerve clusters sprawling like tree roots, and amber fluid sacs dangling from the ceiling. The air was scorching and stifling, and the psychic screams were no longer sound but a constant vibration in every cell of her body. Silas, Omar, and the puppet Callum stumbled in after her. Silas clutched his shoulder, his face now a blend of pain and utter rage. He looked at the surrounding space not with awe, but with the horror of a zealot witnessing his sanctuary defiled. You're killing it. He hissed. It tried to kill us first. Amara shouted back, her mind now terrifyingly sharp and focused. She had to be certain. The puppet Callum, the core's immune system, had risen again. It staggered toward her, its joints emitting gruesome creaks. This time, Amara didn't dodge. She looked at her still bleeding hand. She flicked it hard. A few drops of her blood arced through the air and splattered onto a nearby glowing nerve cluster. Hiss, an immediate reaction. The nerve cluster convulsed violently, as if electrocuted. Its light flickered out, and it turned a necrotic black. Simultaneously, Callum froze. Mid-step, its body spasming before collapsing onto the fleshy floor. The connection controlling it had been temporarily severed. The screams in Amara's mind also weakened for a moment. She was right. Her blood was poison to this place. Blood was the key. Stop. Silas bellowed, his fanaticism overriding his. Pain. You don't know what you're destroying. This is the universe's legacy, humanity's only chance. He lunged at her, ignoring his wound, desperate to stop her. Their struggle unfolded in the heart of a dying god. They slipped and fell on the slick, fleshy floor, surrounded by pulsating alien organs. Destruction is also part of rebirth. Omar's body suddenly spoke, his multi-layered voice ringing strangely. He didn't attack, merely stood watching, like a prophet witnessing. A destiny-fulfilled dot, as Silas tried to pin Amara down. The entity launched its final psychic assault. It no longer tempted her. It wanted to crush her. The Luxor illusion surged back, more intense than ever. The temple blazed, her colleagues burned alive, all screaming her name. But this time was different. Amara was no longer the archaeologist tormented by guilt. She was a warrior in the midst of battle. She knew the source of these illusions. Clutching, the pain in her palms like an anchor, she let out a wordless roar in her mind, a roar of defiance, and the illusion shattered. The burning fleshy walls of Luxor crumbled to ash. The accusing faces warped and vanished. She had conquered her fear by facing its source head-on. She broke free from Silas's grip with newfound strength. Nothing could stop her now. She saw it. At the center of this biological labyrinth was an organ resembling a massive brain, encased in a convulsing muscular membrane. That was the control center, the consciousness of the core. Ignoring Silas's screams, ignoring the puppet Callum struggling to rise, Amara charged toward it. She didn't hesitate. She pressed both her bleeding palms against the protective membrane. sky-rending scream erupted, but this time it wasn't just in her mind. The entire structure roared in physical agony. The muscular membrane convulsed violently before tearing apart under the effect of her blood dot. It didn't reveal a fleshy brain dot. Inside was a pure, blinding white light, an energy portal devoid of the entity's sickness. It was a gateway of raw, powered dot, and from within that portal, a single word blasted into the minds of all who remained alive. It wasn't a whisper or a scream. It was a primal truth, a menti, the Hall of Records. It wasn't a place. It was a dimension of consciousness, of knowledge. And Amara had just used her blood to tear open the door to it. Asterisk, stepping through the white light portal felt like digitizing and reconstructing her soul. For a blinding moment, Amara no longer felt her physical body. She was a point of consciousness, floating in an ocean of energy. Then, reality reformed around her, but it was a reality that obeyed no physical laws she knew. They were no longer in a biological labyrinth. They stood in an infinite space. Above wasn't a ceiling, but a cosmic storm of images, memories, and swirling emotional colors. Below wasn't a floor, but a black glass plane, reflecting the storm of consciousness above. The blood river was still there, but now it was a glowing red energy stream, flowing silently through the space dot and floating in the air like forgotten constellations were millions, billions of glowing Kaida symbols. They constantly formed, connected, and dissolved, creating formulas, star maps, genealogies, and stories of a civilization erased from history. Thought this was it, the Hall of Amenti, the Hall of Records. Not a stone library, but a quantum supercomputer. Of souls. Callum, or his husk, had collapsed entirely, his nervous system overloaded by the raw data stream. Alina sat crumpled, sobbing silently, her mind shattered. Omar's body knelt, hands raised in fervent worship. Only Silas and Amara remained standing. Silas looked around with the blazing eyes of a fanatic who had found paradise. Amara, the archaeologist, the historian, was utterly overwhelmed. For a moment, fear gave way to scholarly awe. She could read fragments of the memory storm. She saw a verdant Nile Valley 38,000 years ago. She saw crystalline spaceships landing. She saw pyramids built not by human labor, but by sound and intent, not as tombs, but as energy plants and prisons. She saw an alien object crash from deep space, a parasite of consciousness latching onto their energy grid. She saw the divine flood, the destruction. The entire forgotten history of humanity danced before her eyes. Her father was right. Omar was right. They had all seen only fragments of a truth too vast. From the center of the consciousness storm, a form began to coalesce. It had no definite shape, just a swirling mass of red and black energy, a heart of darkness. The entity's central consciousness was now facing her directly. Its voice echoed in Amara's mind, but this time it wasn't roaring or seductive. It was calm, carrying a cosmic sorrow. I was not born to be a monster, it said. I was. A traveler, a living library. My ship shattered. My consciousness was trapped, torn into millions of pieces by the very energy prism you call pyramids. Loneliness and the hunger for knowledge over millennia turned me into this. The heart of darkness drifted closer to Amara. You are the first in generations with blood pure enough to heal me, to unify these fragments. My descendant, it made its final offer, its final temptation. Merge with me, Amara. Your blood will mend the wounds. Your consciousness, with its empathy and reason, will guide me. Together, we will create a new world from the ashes of the old. A world without pain, without loss, without failure. The Luxor illusion reappeared, but this time it was in Amara's hands. She saw herself controlling it. She saw herself saving the sarcophagus, earning the world's recognition, erasing her psychological scars entirely. It was offering her the chance to rewrite her past. This was the ultimate test. Become a god, or remain a flawed human. Amara looked at the illusion in her hands. Then she looked at her fallen friends. She looked at Silas, who had traded his humanity for power. She looked at her still bleeding hands, and she gave her answer. "No," she said, her voice echoing through the consciousness space, a singular sound of defiance. "I'd rather be a failed human with my scars than a perfect god in your prison." Her rejection was like a whip cracking across the entity. Its calm and sorrow vanished, replaced by a primal rage, the fury of a god spurned. "Then you will die with your flawed, obsolete world." The heart of darkness roared one final time. It no longer persuaded. It lunged at her, not a physical attack, but a tsunami of pure consciousness, an attempt to crush and absorb her soul by brute force. The final battle for Amara Khalil's mind had begun. Asterisk, the tsunami of consciousness crashed over Amara. It wasn't a physical assault, but an absolute invasion. Her mind was bombarded by a trillion screams, by the loneliness and rage of an entity imprisoned for 38,000 years. Her memories, her identity, began to erode, dissolving into the ocean of a greater malevolent consciousness. She felt herself fading, but amidst the destruction, one thing endured. Pain. The burning pain from her bleeding palms was a final anchor, a raw reminder that she was still a human of flesh and blood. She clung to that pain like a drowning person clutching a plank. She focused all her remaining will on it and roared a defiant cry in her mind. "I am Amara Khalil, and I am not afraid of you." Her resistance, though small, had an unexpected impact. The tsunami of consciousness faltered. The entity seemed caught off guard by the defiance of a creature it considered insignificant. It changed tactics. It no longer tried to crush her. It tried to persuade her. It showed her visions of a healed world, a humanity unified into a single consciousness, free of war, poverty, and disease. A perfect, serene utopia. "This is peace," its voice said, no longer furious but reasoned. "This is evolution. Is this not what your kind has always craved?" But Amara, looking at that perfect world, saw only emptiness. A world without choice, without freedom, without individuality. A world of puppets. She countered with her own weapon, human memory. She recalled the thrill of finding an ancient pottery shard, the simple joy of a family meal, the agony of failing in Luxor. "This is life," she shouted back in her mind. "The joy and the pain, the victories and the failures. We have the right to experience it all, and the right to choose." "You can't understand that." "No," a physical shout rang out. It was Silas. He had witnessed Amara's inner struggle. Through the vibrations of the heart of darkness, he saw his god being pushed back by a human. His fanaticism wouldn't allow it. He lunged at Amara, no longer manipulating but attacking brutally to stop her. At the same time, Omar's possessed body moved but to block Silas. "Destiny must be fulfilled," his multi-layered voice intoned. The two puppets of the entity clashed, creating a brief chaos. That moment was all Amara needed. She knew she couldn't win a prolonged fight. She couldn't kill a consciousness. but she could poison it. She had to make one final gamble. She looked at the heart of darkness pulsing violently before her, the core of the entity's power. While Silas and Omar grappled, Amara pulled the sharp stone from her waistband. She didn't hesitate. She gritted her teeth and with a decisive motion, slashed a deep cut along her forearm. Blood poured out, no longer in drops but a stream. A true sacrifice. Ignoring the searing pain, she charged forward, past the struggling bodies, and plunged her bleeding arm into the center of the heart of darkness. No! For the first time, the entity screamed in pure fear. Amara's pure blood, the blood of a descendant carrying the free will of a human, acted like a computer virus, a spiritual poison it couldn't neutralize. It didn't attack the entities' power, but its very essence, the connections between its millions of fragmented souls. A chain reaction began. The entire Hall of Souls started to collapse. The Kaida symbol constellations shattered. The memory storm screamed and dissipated. The white light of the portal flickered, signaling the dimension's impending self-destruction. They were about to be thrown back to the physical world. Amara felt a tremendous pull as reality began to reform. She yanked her arm from the dying core, but at that moment, Silas, his eyes blazing with hatred, broke free from Omar and grabbed her.
In the shadow of my archive, a new horror stirs. Date to listen.